Cisco instructor Andrea here, and today we're going to continue our tutorials around network addressing. We are going to find the network address, but we are going to expand this, and from there we're going to find the address range available from that network. So we're going to, after finding the network address, we're going to find the first usable address of that network. And as we've been talking about in class, we'll use that for the default gateway. We're also going to find the last usable address for the network, and then finally the broadcast address. Okay, so let's begin the tutorial, and I'm going to do several examples. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and find a network address, because from there we can begin to find all of the other addresses. So we're going to start with a simple 192.168.10.0/24 network. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put this address into binary. 168. I feel like I'm a little rusty. Okay, I want to do my subnet mask, which I know is 24, so we need to have 24 ones that are all on. All of these are going to be off. So I know, because I have 24 ones, everything here is what's part of my network, right? So this is going to be part of my network address. Again, hopefully none of this is new. Should all be review for us. So I know that my network address is going to be 192.168.10.0/24. So I'm going to just go ahead and fill in my network /24. Now, to find the first usable address, I want you to hear what the definition of the first usable address is, and I've written that down here in this helper document. The definition of the first usable address is when all of our host bits are off except the last one. So we know that over here, these are all of our host bits. Everything over here are our host bits, right? So everything here is just going to stay the same. We know that our network bits are not going to be changing, right? Our network bits are not changing. These are not going to change. But our host bits, we can change these. So the definition of the first usable is when I leave all of the host bits off, except I turn the very last one on. Okay? So now I can easily figure out what my first usable address is. It's going to be 192.168.10.1, and it's still in the /24. Okay, now I want to find my last usable address. I know that the network is going to stay the same. That network is not going to change. So I've got a 168, right? That's going to stay the same. A 10. Okay, now the definition of the last usable, because again, remember right now we're figuring out hosts. So I'm going to manipulate the hosts. So the definition of the last usable is when I turn all of the host bits on except the last one. So I've turned all of the host bits on except the last one. Okay, so now I've got the same network portion, but what's changed is I've turned all of these on. So if I add all of these up except the last one, I've got a 254/24. Okay? Now the broadcast address. Remember, a broadcast address is the address that we can use to broadcast to every device that's on the network. All of this is going to stay the same, right? We know that the network is staying the same. Okay, but the definition of a broadcast is when all of the host bits are on. So now the way I'm manipulating the host bits is I'm turning them all on. So if all of these are on, now I've got a 255, right? Because when all of the bits are on in this octet, I've got a 255. Okay? Let's do another one. All right, let's do another example, and this time I'm going to do an example of an IP. We're going to do it with an IPv4 address, and we'll find the network and everything. So we're going to do a 192.168.80.5, and we'll do a /16. All right, so we're going to do 192. Let's convert that into binary, right? And a 168. And let's see, an 80. And 5. So let's see, 4. 5, right? So there's our IPv4 address in binary, and then we'd want to do a subnet mask of 16. So we know we have 16 ones that are all turned on. Right? Here's our magic number so that we know what our increment would be, and we're ending in the second octet. All of these are turned off. So we can figure out what our network address would be, right? Our network address would be 192.168.00, because wherever the ones are, when we do our Boolean, that tells us what our network address would be, which is what we did on our last video. So we've got our 168, we're doing our Boolean. This is all going to be zeros, right? Because everything is off. Our subnet mask. So there we have figured out our we figured out our network address. 192.168.0.0/16. All right, now let's figure out what our first usable address is. So we know that we've got to carry our network portion of our address down. So that part can't change. Wherever our subnet mask is, that has to stay the same. So our 168 is going to stay the same, right? But now here's where our hosts are, right? So we're going to be manipulating wherever our hosts are. So this is all hosts. So this is what we're going to be manipulating. Okay, so the definition of the first usable address is when we turn all of the host bits off except the very last one. So that's easy. We just leave these all off, right? Off, 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 except this one. So what is our first usable address? It's going to be 192.168.0.01/16, right? Now let's figure out our last usable. So we know that the network part stays the same, so I'm just going to write 192.168 because we know that stays the same. But the definition of our last usable is when all of the host bits get turned on except the last one. So let's turn it on, right? We're going to turn all of these on except which one? This last one. Okay? So I've got 192.168. Now what is this value? When every bit is turned on in the octet, it's 255. So it's dot 255. And now all of these are on except the last one. So it's dot 254 slash 16. Hopefully that's not cut off on the paper. So my last usable is 192.168.255.254 slash 16. Now, definition of a broadcast, same thing. Let's just carry this down because we know those stay the same. But what's the definition of a broadcast? It's when the host bits get turned on. So that's nice and easy. All of these are on. 192.168.255.255 slash 16. Alright, so we've just manipulated these host bits to figure out what the range is. So for this network, what our range of addresses are is 192.168.0.0, that's the network, and it goes through the broadcast 192.168.255.255, with the first usable being 0.1 and the last usable being 255.254. Because remember, the network address is not a usable address. It's serving as the network. The broadcast also is not a usable address. It can't be assigned to a host. It can't be assigned to a server. It can't be assigned to an interface. It's not usable. It's being used for the broadcast for that entire network. Okay? So now let's do another example, because I don't want people, what I find is sometimes students get overly comfortable thinking, oh, it's always going to be a 255, it's always going to end in a 255. Well, that's not the case. The two examples we've done so far have been subnet masks that ended on the octet boundary, a 16 or a 240, a slash 24. But when we have a classless address like a 28 or a 27 or a 23, then it's going to be a different broadcast address. So let's do one of those examples, okay? I'm going to continue with a new example, except we're going to do an example with a classless subnet mask. That way we can see how it affects the first and the last and the broadcast address. So let's do a 192.168.160.2 slash, we'll do a 27. So I'm going to go through this one kind of quickly because, again, this is pretty much the same or a similar address to what we've been doing each time now. Okay, and we know that this is going to stay, or the subnet mask, well, let's see. So we've got 27 ones that are all turned on in our subnet mask. So there's 24, 25, 26, 27. So we see here our magic number, right, is going to be the 32. And we're in the fourth octet. So we know that our network is going to be a 192.168.160. Now these three, the first three, are going to be they need to stay off because the subnet mask is telling us that they are going to stay off. Okay, so now we're going to figure out the first usable address. Okay, so again, looking at the subnet mask, these bits need to stay off because the subnet mask tells us that they're going to stay the same. but we're going to be looking at everything in our hosts, right? So right here is where we're making any changes. So the definition of the first usable address is when all of the host bits stay off except the last one, okay? So our network address, let me just back up, let's fill out what our network address is, 168.160.0/27. Our first usable is 192.168.160.1/27. Okay. Now we want to find the last usable, so we know that our network, the first octet stays the same, the second octet stays the same, the third octet. Now again, these bits are going to stay off, okay? Now, the definition of the last usable address is when the host bits all turn on except the last one, okay? So what is our last usable address? Well, it's going to be a 192.168.160.31/27. Because I am adding up, oh wait, 30, it's a 30. Need to go back to basic math. I'm adding the 16 plus the 8 plus the 4 plus the 2, and I'm leaving that last one off. So notice how it's not a 254, right? Okay. So now let's do the broadcast address. Again, we know that the 192, the 168 stays the same, the 160. All right, these have to stay off because the subnet mask tells us that the network bits stay the same. The definition of a broadcast is when all of the host bits get turned on. So I've turned them all on. If I add 16 plus 8 plus 4 plus 2 plus 1, I get a 31. So I've got 192.168.160.31, and it's a /27. So that's my broadcast address. So again, just so that you don't get the idea that every broadcast ends in a 255, whenever we're ending our, whenever we have a subnet mask other than something that is a /8, a /16, or a /24, we are most likely we're going to have something other than the 255 and the 254. Okay, so what's our network range? Well, our network address is the 192.168.160.0/27, and our range goes all the way through our broadcast address, 168.160.31/27. Okay, now we're going to do another example where one of our network bits is on. Because again, I find that sometimes that can be confusing when we're first learning how to figure out these addresses. So we'll do one more example, maybe even another one. The more practice we do, the better. Okay. Okay, this time let's do 192.168.160.130/27. Okay. Let's see. So this again, I'm hoping is going to be really familiar. So I'm going to kind of whip through this quickly. Well, if I go too fast, I might make a mistake. So there we've got 128 turned on, right? So then here now we've got the 130. Our subnet mask is a 27. So I want to turn 27 ones on. There's our 24, 25, 26, 27. Okay, so I know what our subnet mask is. So see here, we're going to have a different network address, right? My network address I know is going to be a 192.168, 160, 128, because I'm going to do the Boolean, and we see here the subnet mask is showing us how this 128 is part of our network because of where our subnet mask is. So everything over here is going to be part of our network, right? And everything over here, these are our hosts. So these are the bits that we're going to manipulate, is everything over here. Okay, so I know that 192.168.160, this is all going to be part of my network. Now, the subnet mask tells me that this 1 is going to stay turned on. 0, 0, definition of the first usable address is the host bits are all off except the first one. So what will my first address be? Actually, let's come here, get a little ahead of myself. My network, 192.168.160.128/27. First usable, 192.168.160. Now look, we've got to take into consideration that the 128 is turned on. So it's 128 plus 1. So our first usable address is 129/27. It isn't going to be 160.1. We've moved into a new network, right? Now the other way to do this is I could have just added 1. I always know that the first usable address is going to be the first one after the network address. We just add 1. Okay, so now let's figure out the last usable address. Okay, so I know that these network bits don't change. The definition of the last usable, all of the host bits get turned on except the last one. All right, so I've got 192.168.160. So what have I got here? I'm going to have 128 plus 16 plus 8 plus 4 plus 2. So I'm adding 128 plus 30, right? So 158. Did I do my math right? Okay. Okay, next we want to figure out what our broadcast address is. So we know that the first 3 octets, they're staying the same. Okay, 192, 168, 160. These network bits have to stay the same. The definition of the broadcast is when all of the host bits get turned on. Okay, so I've got 128 plus 31, right? So then I've got my broadcast address, which is going to be 192.168.160.1, bad writing, 159/27. Right, so basically I'm adding 31 plus 128, 9, right, 159. I think I did that right. Okay, so my range is my network address, 192.168.160.128, which is my network, all the way through my broadcast. So remember, these two addresses cannot be used on any of my host devices, right? The network is for the actual network address. The broadcast is the address that would be used in order to communicate with every device on the network. But everything in between is what I would address any computers with, any servers with, any interfaces with, any SVIs with. So everything in between is what I would use to address my host devices. I hope this helps. We've got a lot of assignments to practice this with, and in the next couple of chapters we're actually going to learn how to do this in a shorter and even faster way. Sometimes though it helps to learn how these bits work and visualize it before you learn shortcuts. Thank you. Have a good day.